How do we actually know that we know a word? It sounds like a simple question, but it's actually one of the biggest sources of confusion in language learning. When we're beginners, we often think the ability to use a word in a different language is synonymous with knowing a word. But we really don't need to know what we're saying to say something. I could go online, find a direct translation of an English word in Russian, and perform it for you on camera perfectly. I could translate it for you, I could define it, I could use it in a sentence, I could drill it until it became practically effortless to pull it out of my brain. The same way we can all effortlessly recall the capital of our home state, our childhood address, our phone number. But does any of that mean I have a true deep understanding of the word? We might be able to recall the word fast, but can we recognize it in native speech without even thinking? Would we naturally utter the word in conversation like we do with words in our own native language? Would we be able to retain the word over the course of our entire lifetime? Without considering every dimension of how we understand a word, we're left with a flimsy surface level label slapped on an idea, instead of a concept that gets deeply woven into how we actually think. What's going on, guys? My name's Nick. I'm the creator of Lengualytics and a fluent speaker of the Spanish language. I want to illustrate what I mean using acting as an example. Imagine two actors auditioning for the same character in a movie. The first one, actor A, has every character's line memorized, every word completely flawless. He could recite the entire script without a single slip. The second actor, actor B, has never even read the script, but he's a friend of the writer and has spent the last month at the writer's home talking about the character. He understands the character's motivations. He understands the character's feelings. What would the character do in this situation? What would the character say in that situation? He's lived in the character. He's tried to embody the character. At the audition, the casting director has both actors read from a scene of the script. Actor A looks like he knows the role better. He has the whole thing locked in. He hits every beat perfectly. He's reciting something he's read hundreds of times. Actor B does well, but his performance isn't as polished. It's off the cuff. At a glance, it might seem like actor A understands the character better. But what would happen if the casting director said, ditch the script? What if he told the actors to just behave like the character in an improvised scene? It would become clear that actor A is just reciting lines, whereas actor B actually has a really deep understanding of the character. Most beginners think learning words means becoming like actor A, reciting words perfectly on command. But actually learning words is becoming like actor B. It's not about the lines you can recite, it's about deeply understanding what's beneath them. To get into this further, let me make a list of what speaking actually improves. Pronunciation, recall speed, the ability to form ideas in the language, the ability to express ideas in the language, confidence, real-time fluidity. Now let me ask you this, can those skills improve without understanding the language any better? Obviously, yes. A speaker can get dramatically better at expressing words they already know. But getting better at expressing a word is not the same as understanding a word more deeply. That's delivery improving, not necessarily understanding improving. So if speaking isn't the proof that you know a word, then what is? Let's go back to the question we started with. How do we actually know that we know a word? Here's my answer. You know a word when it becomes an implicit prediction possibility. Or less technically, you know a word when your brain can feel where it belongs. When it's woven so deeply into your understanding that it shows up before you consciously reach for it. You hear, Harry Potter raised his wand and cast a, and your brain has already handed you the word spell. Nobody asked you to recall it. You didn't prove that you could translate it. You didn't define it. It simply appeared. Because the meaning of that word fits that moment so perfectly that your brain cannot help but generate it. That's the moment that proves you truly understand a word. Not that you can produce it on command, but that you understand the word's relationship to everything around it so deeply that the language itself pulls it out of you before it's even there. And notice what just happened. You produced the language. You generated the next word. That's output. It's output with everything else stripped away. No mouth, no confidence, no rehearsal, no performance, no recitation, just your brain generating the right word because it understands where it fits. It's the purest form of output there is, and it just happened to you while you were doing nothing but listening. This is exactly what actor B had that actor A didn't. Actor A could only deliver a line if it was written down for him. But actor B he could just feel what belonged next because he deeply understood the character. Knowing a word works the exact same way. It was never about your ability to recite it. It's the moment a word becomes a part of your implicit prediction possibilities. By connecting a word to other words or other ideas, places, people, moods, we're grafting it in to our relational model of the language. So when we go to listen or we go to speak, our brain has already deeply connected that word to everything it tends to live around. And the meaning, along with the prediction of what comes next, is already there waiting before we ever even reach for it. To actually produce the word in conversation, that requires us to train our recall speed, to train our ability to form ideas in the language, and our ability to make sounds with our mouths. But all of these things are separate from the underlying relational model that makes all of this possible. Language learning was never about stacking up the amount of words you can recall on command. It's about your ability to make a set of implicit predictions while listening to the language. To aid your implicit comprehension by lining up the handful of things that could possibly come next. I want to show you a visualization of how I've experienced this at work, and then through this visualization, I think you'll get a really good idea of what I mean by a set of implicit predictions. So let's define implicit prediction, an unconscious expectation of what someone is going to say next in a given situation. And a set of implicit predictions is the collection of all plausible expectations of what someone is going to say next in a given situation. Picture this, you're on a Tinder date in a restaurant. You finish your meal and the waiter walks over holding the little black folder with the check. He's about to speak, but before he says a single word, your brain is already working. It's taking in the whole situation, where you are, who's talking, what just happened, what usually happens at this exact moment, and from all of that, it quietly lines up the handful of things he might be about to say. And that handful of things is the set of implicit predictions. He could say, "Here's your check. Was everything all right? Can I get you anything else? Are you paying together or separately?" There's only so many things a waiter says in that moment, and your brain already has them ready because it's seen the situation 100 times before. So when he opens his mouth, you're not decoding him sound by sound, you're listening to confirm. Every word he says snaps a few of those possibilities away. The instant you hear, "Are you?" the amount of predictions begins to collapse. And if he continues, "Are you paying?" more predictions collapse. Your brain isn't hanging on every word, it's using statistical analysis of everything you've heard prior to prime you to understand what's about to be said. That's what understanding a language in real time actually feels like, at least to me. You don't come to a sentence empty-handed, building it up one word at a time. You come to the sentence already holding a set of implicit predictions. Every word you truly know participates in this process. The reason your brain can generate these predictions is because thousands of words have already become a part of its implicit prediction machinery. And building those predictions, experience after experience, until words become part of the way your brain thinks, that's the real work of learning a word, of acquiring a word. A lot of people think understanding comes from lightning fast recall. But when we listen in our native language, we're not constantly recalling words, we're recognizing words. Their meanings already feel like they belong before we ever consciously think about them. All the skills that speaking develops, pronunciation, recall speed, idea formation, they're all important for speaking the language. But there's a tendency to mistake them for understanding itself. They're the skills everyone can see. They're the skills that make you appear fluent. But they're not necessarily a reflection of how deeply you've acquired the words you're using. Just like actor A's ability to recite the script doesn't actually say much about how well he understands the character. And I think this is the part that should change how we think about knowing a word, and therefore change how we think about language learning in general. Because if this is true, the ultimate expression of knowing a word is internal, not external. It's not whether you can say the word, it's not whether you can translate the word, it's not whether you can define the word, it's not whether you can eloquently recite the word on command with perfect pronunciation in a sentence. The deepest proof you know a word is something that nobody else can directly see. And this really matters, because the way you define knowing a word determines the way you're going to set out to try to learn one. If you think knowing a word means saying the word, translating the word, reciting the word, or recalling the word as fast as you possibly can, then of course you're going to build your whole language learning routine around flashcards, drills, and speaking practice. You're going to train your external performance because that's what you think language learning is. But if knowing a word means building this invisible sense of where it belongs, then the method you use has to change. Because you don't build that by ripping words out of context and trying to recite them faster. You build it by meeting the word again and again inside real meaning until your brain doesn't just just remember the word, it understands the world around it. This is why comprehensible input is the key to language acquisition. It's the only method of language learning that builds this superset of all our sets of implicit predictions. It's the only way to build this relational model of our target language that affords us native-like understanding and eventually native-like speech. If you missed my video on how we actually learn words, I feel like that video is the natural continuation of this topic. So I'm gonna put that video right here as the end screen. In that video, I'm gonna give you my mental model of how we go from not knowing a word at all to this deep implicit understanding of a word that we have in our own native language. I will see you there.